Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemaphilepod.com. If poetry had a pop icon, Mary Oliver would be it. Celebrated bestseller, Pulitzer Prize winner, lover of dogs and long walks in the woods, openly queer but intensely private. Oliver was America's unlikely contemporary mystic, stalking the ponds and forest of Cape Cod for nearly 50 years in order to open herself and her readers to the unknown and unknowable world. Mary Oliver, saved by the beauty of the world. We're joined today by the director, Sasha Waters. Sasha, welcome to Cinemophile.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. As I was sharing with you before we got started, you could have said Mary Oliver to me, and it would have drawn a blank expression. I just did not know. Admittedly, not someone who knows a lot about poetry beyond the world famous poetry that we're all familiar with. Beautiful film, beautiful and great to get to know her and Molly and so many other people we see in the film. How did you come to this project?
So I have long been a fan of Mary Oliver. I believe that I first discovered her poetry through the Writer's Almanac, which was kind of a short broadcast daily on public radio in the 90s and the early 2000s that Garrison Keillor did, where he would read a poem and talk about the poet just for a little bit, just for a few minutes every single day. And so the first poem I remember hearing by Mary Oliver is a poem called When Death Comes that we use in the film, and it just stopped me in my tracks. And in the film, we use that Garrison Keillor introduction to the poem to kind of harken back for those of us of a certain age and generation who that's how we discovered so much poetry in the world, to remind us of that Garrison Keillor Writer's Almanac connection. So I've long been a fan of Mary Oliver. I made a film about a photographer named Garry Winogrand for American Masters, and I had been looking for a new subject, talking to them about a few different ideas, and then this one came up and arose, and it just seemed like the perfect partnership. So this is a co-production with American Masters, and they couldn't have been more wonderful and supportive.
Thank you for that, because I thank you for that sort of collaboration with PBS, and just a bit of an editorial here. Let's save PBS. There's a lot of things that we need to save in this world, and that's one of them. And
PBS is one of them.
American Masters, Nova, Frontline. The list goes on and on. So I'm glad this collaboration came about. Now so for the sake of people listening to our conversation, when will they be able to see Mary Oliver, Saved by the Beauty of the World?
So the film opens in theaters in New York, Miami, and Provincetown on July 3rd, so very soon, next week. And then it expands to theaters more broadly after that. It's a limited release, right? Documentary is still struggling to find its place in the marketplace, but I'm hoping that people will go see it in the theaters, and that if someone's listening and they want it to come to a theater near them, they could reach out and ask the theater to please book it. It will also be on PBS American Masters on August 25th. So our theatrical run will be pretty short because it will then be on American Masters. I will say that American Masters has a length requirement, so the broadcast version of the film is 10 minutes shorter. So I'm quite partial to, the director's cut, for lack of a better term, which is 91 minutes, and that will be the theatrical, and maybe down the road the streaming version. The version on PBS will be a little bit shorter.
Well, as I got to know Mary Oliver through this film, she is, as we all are, complicated, many layers to her. Mm-hmm. What was your way in to sort of unlocking the puzzle that is Mary Oliver and her life? What was your way in?
The primary way in is through the poems and the essays, although the poems she's not what's known as a confessional poet. She's not very often writing in the first person, using what she calls the I voice. Yeah. So it's not like we're learning a lot of immediate, direct biographical information. Certainly she draws on her own experiences in the poems, but I think it's a way to kind of think about the broad themes that she's interested in. She talks a lot about attention and paying attention. She's quite attentive to the natural world. She also grapples with just what it means to be alive and human, and in love or in pain or ambitious. So I think thinking about her through the lens of the poems and the essays is important. Of course, talking to her friends and people who she knew was really critical. I mean, the very first interview we filmed was with John Waters, and he had so many wonderful stories that he told, and other people who knew her as well. So that was useful. And then her biographer, Lindsay Whalen, the biography that Lindsay is writing is still in progress, so it hasn't been published yet. But Lindsay was an advisor on the film, and really, really important just in terms of as a resource, someone who I could always go to with questions and so on and so forth. So that was really critical as well. We also, last thing is we had access to her personal archives. So her archive is now in the Library of Congress, but before those boxes were deposited there, I was able to go through them. And that's, boxes and boxes of fan mail, boxes of Mary's personal correspondence, both letters she wrote and, correspondence from friends over many, many years, her photo albums, her, letters with publishers, magazine editors, etc. So that was also, that's important to any documentary, but especially someone as private as Mary Oliver was really useful to have all of that information.
There is certainly an arc, not just, I mean, obviously her lifespan is an arc, but I think what's particularly important, and I think it's a roadmap, it's a signpost for anyone who watches this film, which is her early days, her early years, and her
Mm-hmm.
situation and her family situation, her family dynamics. And it seems that for her and for many, many people, looking the other way in things that
Mm-hmm.
happened as a child, not
Mm-hmm.
understanding, not knowing the context, understanding what was happening. And I think it plays out in her life, but it also has this kind of landmine
Sure.
later on in life that she
Sure.
suddenly starts to understand and grapple with. I'm bringing this to your attention because we wonder where these hugely creative people, what do they draw upon? What are they
Mm-hmm.
thinking? And I think for her, it was subliminal and obvious. There's the things that happen
Yes.
in our life. So I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but
I think that she spent an enormous time in the woods. I mean, she really, in that way, her life is almost like a fairy tale. She has this monster. Well, I shouldn't say monster, right? Because humans can be monstrous, but they're still humans. But I mean, she
yeah,
she escapes this tragic childhood by going into the woods, and
yeah.
that's where she learns resilience. I think all kinds of interior strategies for survival. And in that way, it is almost like a fairy tale. And it gives her the ability to go on this journey, such as she writes about in the poem, The Journey, that will lead her to this remarkable life that she's led. I think that going inside of herself and into her own experience, even if she doesn't fully understand it until she's an adult, is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
And I think, the poet Danica Kelly says in the film, you can only push things away for so long that they come back, right? The bill always comes due,
Yeah.
more or less. And I think that's certainly true for Mary as it is for all of us.
Yeah, again, I think whether you are listening to our conversation and don't know anything about Mary Oliver, which I didn't, it is a very powerful film because in addition to the fact that she's a fantastic poet, she's also just watching her move through her life and how she grapples with the same questions that anyone listening to this conversation is grappling with as well. In terms of where she fits in the iconography of poets, the Mount Rushmore of poets, and I don't want to get into that conversation. I don't want to start but in terms of who influenced her, like I know in the
Sure.
film, Walt Whitman was sort of as a reference point for anyone. Now, everyone has seen or read a Walt Whitman poem, been exposed to it. So let's talk about her in
Sure.
relation to sort of the people before her, if you will.
Sure. Well, certainly the 19th century transcendentalists who she mentions in the film, Whitman, Emerson, Shelley.
Yeah.
But there are other poets who are very important to her as well. Robert Frost, I think, is someone who she's reading as well. Stanley Kunitz, who is a how much older? Let's see. He's a different generation. He's an older generation, but they become friends and neighbors in Provincetown. He's important to her. James Wright was, I believe, the first poet she ever wrote to. He was an Ohio poet, and they never met in person, but they wrote to each other. Donald Hall, they wrote to each other. So I think she is She is part of a 19th century lineage, but also engaging with poets of the generation that comes before her and of her own generation as well.
And you mentioned Provincetown. Again, another part of the film. I had no knowledge of Provincetown and its importance, and also the beauty and kind of a crossroads for a lot of different people, which really is a character in the film. Provincetown is
Yes, for sure. We definitely thought of Provincetown as its own character, like from the beginning, like just in terms of thinking about the film, like wanting that spirit of Provincetown to be, yeah, be its own character, be a character and be woven throughout the film because it's so important. Scientists have studied the sound, the smell, the salt in the air. It's all good for you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. But the poets already knew that, right?
Let's talk about Molly,
Yes.
how that relationship came about. And I don't want to give too much away. I know it's easy to talk about Molly without giving too much away, but I feel like this is really going to be a revelation. I really do believe for a lot of people who watch this film. But Molly is a very, very important part of it. Let's talk about her.
Yes. So Molly is her partner of 40 years. They actually meet in almost, again, a fairy tale like way. After high school, Mary wrote to Edna St. Vincent Millay's sister, Norma Millay, who was at the deceased poet's estate organizing her papers, living there, and so on and so forth. And Mary, I mean, speaking of poets who were important to her, Millay was very important to Mary. So she goes there on a pilgrimage from Ohio to upstate New York. She ends up staying for on and off for 6 years. At one point, she's moved to Greenwich Village, but she continued to go back up and visit Steepletop, the name of the estate. And it was there that she met Molly Cook, who was there photographing and I guess also knew Edna Millay's sister Norma. And they met. And Mary describes it as, immediate sparks flying. She says that it took Molly a little more time. Molly was 10 years older than her. And they just, it was a little bit of a rocky road at first, but it ended up becoming this decades long love story. In 1964, they went to Provincetown for the summer and they just stayed. They stayed for more than 40 years.
I just want to very quickly remind our listeners that we're speaking with Sasha Waters. She is the director of Mary Oliver, Saved by the Beauty of the World, and it is going to be in theaters beginning on July 3rd. You said in New York initially,
New
the first
York, Miami, and Provincetown.
Provincetown. Hopefully it'll come out here to Los Angeles, Southern California, and will eventually be on American Masters on PBS.
Yes, in August of this year.
So be looking for it. One of the impressive things about the film and testament to just what kind of influence and impact that Mary Oliver had on people is the array of people that you have in the film talking about her.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite people in the whole world is Stephen Colbert. I love the way the film opens with him trying to get through a poem that's very obviously very emotional, very important to him,
Mm-hmm.
who he sends to his children, and that's kind of a beautiful thread. John Waters was a revelation. I will not kid you. I did not expect to see John
I know a lot of people say that. It's very fun.
John Waters, who lived in Provincetown and was a huge part of their sort of ecosystem of people that they spent time with, Molly and Mary, and also Maria Shriver, Oprah Winfrey's
Mm-hmm.
in here. Norman Mailer was a part of their life. Steve Buscemi, who recites one of the poems. I can imagine that a lot of the people that we see in the film are relatively obvious in their proximity to Mary and Molly and in telling their story. And then there are some who aren't so obvious. Let's talk about that process of putting together the people who help flesh out the story of Mary Oliver.
Well, we wanted to have people who had an authentic connection to Mary, people who were genuinely fans. That was really the first and foremost. We started, I mean, in terms of thinking about the interviews, we started with people who knew her, of people who were friends and knew her, and closely, like John Waters and Maria Shriver, or younger poets who were influenced by her, like David Keplinger, Frank Gaspar. But then, in terms of thinking about her reach and her own celebrity, I discovered on TikTok, Helena Bonham Carter made a TikTok where she reads Wild Geese. And Stephen Colbert came about because in spring of 2024, he had a guest on And in the process of their conversation, he mentioned that he sends the poem The Summer Day to his children every year on the first day of summer. And this was, like 10 friends texted me. I was in the middle of production. Oh my God, Stephen Colbert is a Mary Oliver fan. So we wanted it to have this real organic connection to folks who were really fans of her work.
It's dropped in over the course of the film, the sort of the progression of his attempts to read the poem. It's
Yes.
beautiful. It's just a beautiful, humanizing moment in the film.
He was really wonderful. He was a wonderful, he agreed to do this reading. We weren't sure if we were going to have time to interview with him, and then he stayed and he spoke with us for about half an hour, and it was wonderful. He's a very, he is who he seems to be, right? Like he really is that genuinely warm.
And I once again want to reinforce the notion that if you're like me, you're not someone who is familiar with poetry and poets. This is a wildly entertaining film. You're getting to know one of the true greats in American poetry. You get to spend some time with her, the people who influenced her, the people who she loved and loved her. And it is the cast of people that are brought in to talk about her, why she is who she is, how she got where she did. And it's beautifully done. Just a really wonderful film. It's going to be screening here in Los Angeles on July 11th, the Laemmle Glendale, the Laemmle Town Center, as well as the Laemmle Monica Film Center. So be looking for it there. And it's also going to be on American Masters in August. So be looking for it if you can't get to a theater, which you should get to a theater to see this wonderful film. You can catch up to it on PBS on American Masters in August. Sasha Waters is someone who has spent the last couple of years of your life exploring the life of Mary Oliver, poring over her poetry and the people who influenced her and she's influenced, and all the things that come with someone who's an award-winning, Pulitzer Prize-winning artist. What is Mary Oliver's legacy?
I would not be surprised if people were still reading Mary Oliver 100 years from now. I think that she's that transcendent herself, in the work. The great irony of Mary Oliver's celebrity in her life and now posthumously is that she not only didn't seek it, she actively rejected it.
Yeah.
There's a letter in her archives where she's telling her publisher, "Don't sell me, sell the work." And in making a biographical documentary, you do have to tell the story of the person, because it's the person who we feel for and connect with and who emotionally resonates with us. But at the end of the day, Mary really was about the work. And so I think that is her legacy, that people will continue to find her poems and essays and get something they really need from them.
Also, in all of that, what you said, also Molly Malone Cook deserves a tremendous amount of recognition for being there for her life partner.
Absolutely.
All the things that she contributed made it easier for Mary Oliver to be Mary Oliver.
Yes, 100%. She made Mary's life as a writer possible, for sure.
So this was a journey, a collaboration, a lot of different things that are inspiring, and congratulations
Thank
again
you.
from someone who knew nothing about Mary Oliver to now. I'm going to stand on the roof and yell her name before
This
too
is
long.
great.
Yeah, to full moon, I'm sure. So thank you for your work here, Sasha Waters, director of Mary Oliver, Saved by the Beauty of the World.
Thank you so much, Mike.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.